Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining early. We'll kick off shortly. So good morning. DG, let me know if you're on. So welcome to this parenting town hall, where we just want to talk about education, how it's affecting our children, what we should consider as parents and educators in Lagos, and specifically what we can be doing around ensuring that all stakeholders are doing what they need to do to make sure that our children are getting all the support that they need during these times, because we know what this year has been like, but our children continue to learn, continue to grow, and we just want to be having these conversations regularly to help parents feel that they're getting the support that they need to make sure that their children are getting the best out of education. So we will be kicking off shortly. Welcome, people are logging in. This is also streaming on YouTube, so if at any point you are aware that the meeting room is full, you can still join us on YouTube as well. Okay, so we're just waiting to know when the DG is on. I guess I should do some introductions before we get started. So my name is Yetty Williams, and I'm the founder and CEO of LagosMums. LagosMums is a platform for parents and caregivers. So I say caregivers because that includes anybody who cares for children or takes care of children. And we focus really on raising children in the 21st century. And that includes everything: education, mental health, creativity, all the things that they need so that they thrive in a global community. It's no more good enough to be good for your local government. It's now a worldwide matter. So that's what LagosMums does. And the DG, the Director General for Quality Assurance, Office of Education Quality Assurance, Lagos State, Abiola Seriki-Ayeni, is a dear friend, but also I love what she's doing in terms of helping with quality assurance for education in the state. And we just wanted to have this conversation. It's pretty laid back, it's relaxed, and we just want to talk real talk, so think of it as a virtual town hall, and get ready with your questions. We have some questions that came in already, but we would have Abiola speak to us first, and then we'll start taking Q&A later on. So Abiola, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, LagosMums, for having us here today. It's been a long time coming. We've been discussing this for a while. I think since when COVID is a bit differently and more authentically through government. So I'm so glad to finally be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. You remember we had one early days during the lockdown. I think it was in May. May we had a session, and
I think
it was May. And the feedback from that was just, it's great to have somebody who can speak to us from the States, who understands what we're going through as parents, who understands that this is an unusual time, but parenting and teaching children doesn't take a break. It never takes a break. Your children need their parents, and the children have to continue to be engaged with their education. So with that said, we'd just like you to, introduce yourself, tell us what you do in your, your position, and then we'll just get going with some of the questions that I mentioned some people sent ahead of time who couldn't be here, but those were questions that we were getting from a lot of people. So I've put that into a list of about 3 questions that we'll kick off with, and then we'll have an open line to everyone else on the call.
Okay. So welcome everyone. Thank you, Lagos Moms, for this opportunity. My name is Abiola Seriki-Ayeni. I'm the Director General for the Office of Education Quality Assurance, Lagos State Ministry of Education. What our agency does is we ensure quality in all schools, private, public, anything below tertiary level. And we mainly do that through monitoring. Uh, we're moving away from inspection, but through monitoring and evaluation of schools. We also approve schools. So any one organization that wants to establish a school has to come through the agency and do the needful to be able to consider a school that is legally able to operate within Lagos State. In addition to this, we handle matters of child protection as it pertains to students in schools, any type of investigative matters having to do with schools come to us. So for the most part, the focus is on students, but we've had cases centering on teachers, on school disputes between schools and parents, more recently during COVID, and a breadth of other things that sometimes have just become the new normal and have become a new part of our work as we have come along. So in a nutshell, if I could call that, that's what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. And I've done a rough, very unofficial survey, and it's been interesting to find out that lots of people don't even know an office like yours exists. So a lot of parents that I
Yes,
talk
I'm
to
not
don't feel that
surprised.
there's any way for them to get any information at all about education matters in the state that concerns their children. So when I'm like, no, but the office exists, and they're like, really? We didn't know. So I think things like this we really appreciate it because it allows us to put a face behind some of the work that's being done. Um,
Yeah.
Really helpful to continuously hear from you. So, I like what you said about the challenge with, when we're not challenged, but you talked about some of the disputes that have increasingly come up during this time of high tension, right? So the truth is that there's a lot of tension, um, there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for, uncertainty in the system, and
Mm,
that's part of what
mm.
some of the disputes that we're seeing. So from your experience, what would you say parents and educators need to keep in mind during this season, so that we can reduce some of the disputes that we're finding? Because I'm sure that you will see some common threads in what's causing the disputes.
Yes. So, I mean, that's a very loaded question, but it's a very needed question. I think a lot of it has to do with, in terms of the advice to give would be to keep in mind that this is a different time. There is no playbook. There's no point of reference to make. Surely we can make points of reference from our colleagues all over the world, but certainly nothing compares to having, local content and, something local to feed from, right? Lagos State is very unique in many ways with the private school sector. It's a highly saturated one. Within Nigeria, we are the most populous state, which is for the most part is what actually leads to Nigeria being the most populous, Black nation in the world. A lot of that is centered right here in Lagos. So Lagos is very unique in that way. When we had to, when the issue of school reopening came up and people were comparing us, oh, your state has opened this, Lagos is so different. So we just need to keep that in mind. So just first of all, just recognizing that it's a different time. And, it's important to remember that we're partners, right? We have the same goal for our children. We want them to succeed. We want them to be better than how we met them. We want them to do well and to thrive. So, remembering that we're on the same team, I would have to say would be number one. So remembering that we're on the same team, remembering that Lagos is unique. Number three, I would say is being willing to compromise. Oftentimes, in in a nation like Nigeria, many other nations as well, institutions do have a lot of power more than the individual. But when you're talking about school dynamics, for the most part, that threshold of power has been centered on the institutions, the schools. So this is a time that parents have, have seen things firsthand. Information is out there, and they're questioning things in a way that they probably have not in the past, right? Normally, if a fee is a fee, that's a fee. You either choose for your child to go there or you choose to go elsewhere. But now, parents feel more comfortable asking questions. Parents feel more comfortable coming together for like PTAs and writing together, writing to government as an institution. So I think, despite the fact that the disputes or the yeah, we'll just keep it at disputes. Despite the fact that the disputes have maybe started off as a bad thing, I think there are many opportunities that exist in that space.
Right.
So for parents and for schools.
Right, right. I think you handled that question fantastically. Also, because the truth is sometimes the uncomfortable questions are what allows us to have an insight into how we can turn it around for good. So,
Absolutely.
because there was no playbook, everybody was trying to figure it out. Naturally, there would have been more tension. But what this has done, and I've found it as well with the parents I'm speaking to, is a lot more parents here now feel comfortable to ask questions. But for the
Yes.
first time, we've had things thrown up at us that you've had to ask your school, so how are you going to handle this? Well, what is the plan? You know, they don't even have to have the perfect answers, but you want them to actually have a dialogue with you. I think gone are the days
Yes.
of them expecting that there shouldn't be any dialogue. There should be dialogue. If our children are
Right.
in school, we need to know what you have in mind. How do you mitigate,
Absolutely.
how are you mitigating all these risks and all these challenges? What is your plan? And we just want to know that there is a plan, you know.
And you know what? That's very interesting that you say that, because I think that has definitely that dynamic also has impacted government, right?
Mm.
There's more accountability. We have things like social media that has brought things to the forefront that probably would not have gotten to the forefront before. So I think this is definitely a time for institutions, be it government, be it schools, be it even PTAs, to come together and to address the current needs of the stakeholders that they are in place for. So, we as government are not exempt from that change, and that's part of the reason why we're here today.
Right. I love what you said. Social media is a catalyst for everybody, no matter what industry or space you're in. Social media is
Yeah.
truly a catalyst for change, and it's important for us to harness that positively.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the way I honestly see it. And I think being somebody who honestly has built a business using digital media, I don't
Hmm.
see it, excuse me, I don't see it as all bad. And I think that brings us into another question that we have, which a lot of parents have been asking me and wanted to get across to you, is how do we support our children with online learning? So not necessarily waiting for the school to do it, but just what has happened during this period is everybody was exposed to online learning by force. So that exposure was either done in a very
Yeah.
smooth way where the school was already prepared to do it, or you are a parent left in the lodge saying, what am I going to do? How is my child going to access online learning, even if the school
Yeah.
is not supporting them, right? So
Right.
you speak a
Right.
little bit to that how can a parent decide that, online learning tools are here to stay. I have to take it as my responsibility as a parent to expose my children to the right online learning platform.
Mm.
And then how do we then mirror that and take it to the school? So it's almost like a three-step. And then the third
Yeah.
thing, okay, how does the school tap into this online learning possibility and opportunity that exists?
Yeah. So online learning, very daunting, right? So we have online learning, we have remote learning, because for some people, the learning is TV. So for some people, it's radio. For some people, it's a learning pack, right? So definitely out of school learning, remote learning. And I think sometimes it's good to think about why, right? So, what is the purpose that we're sending our children to school? or why do you send your child to a particular school? I think getting back to the purpose will really help in figuring out what steps you need to move forward. So backward by design. I love backward by design. It's 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 a theory that I learned while I was in ed school, and it's thinking through the entire process with the end in mind, right? So knowing, as a teacher, knowing where you want your children to be at the end of the year, as a parent, where you want your children to be by the end of a certain time period, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5, 10 years, right? Where do you picture them being? So this online learning of a thing, depending on the level of access that your schools or your students have had, you probably have dealt with it in some way. This is probably not very different. And for some people, it is totally different, right? It's new, it's different, it's nothing they've ever engaged in. Now, now is the purpose just to go back to business as usual? Because we know that's not going to happen, right? Schools have changed forever. They have changed whether we like it or not. Even if when COVID ends, we still need to keep this experience in mind so that we're stronger. Our children are more prepared for university or for what they do post basic education. It's still going to be with us. I think there was a time I had a conversation with you where you told me that I think during Ebola, your children's school had actually started, they had gone through their teething period, right? With with online learning. And then now when COVID came, they were better prepared as a result of that. So first thing I would say is to embrace this time. There's nothing that you learn that's different or that's new or that's stretched that doesn't feel painful, right? Even when you want to get a promotion at work and you want to learn a new skill, there's some level of pain, associated with doing something that's totally different, and that's okay. Let's embrace that. So number one, I would say is embrace this time, embrace what's going on. That's number one. Number two, know what you want out of it for your children. It's very easy for me to use my own children as an example. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I was telling you earlier today, there was a time that my daughter was being called upon during her online class and she refused to answer. And her dad came out and then I came out and she was like, everyone should just stop stressing me. And I was like, stress, okay, but let's stress, So just also recognizing that you're depending on the type of child that you have, they're not going to always be able to put into words how this time is affecting them. In fact, most times, even us as adults, we won't be able to really put into words how this time is affecting us, or even recognize that this time is affecting us at all, but we'll see it in how, how we're working with other people. It manifests in different ways. So be mindful that, it's not the end of the world if your child is not going to get multiplication. It's not the end of the world. Is your child mentally stable? Is your child using that video game to make up for something else? Is your child more engaged in online learning, in online activities, not even online learning, because when you're in online learning, then you can't be exposed to online activities. It's just easier and it's more difficult to monitor. I won't say more difficult. It's not as it's not as familiar to parents and to teachers too as to how to monitor, right? You can tell when a child is not on task when they're doing their regular assignments, but when the majority of their education is being executed online, that requires a different skill set in being able to monitor and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. So, and as we know, even adults are somewhat addicted to phones and addicted to technology. So imagine, this tool being in the hands of children who don't know what to do with it and who are just running all over the place, right? So we need to be mindful of what other things children are also being exposed to as they execute the online learning. Another thing is pacing yourself, pacing your children. Don't have the same expectations you had for them as when they were in school, right? So if it took them maybe an hour to do an assignment, a math problem with pen and paper, maybe with, doing that online will be a little different because of the, um, be, because now there's another level of skill set that's needed, and that takes getting used to on the part of the students, right? To navigate when, to look at your alerts or look at your emails in the case of a learning management system, to make sure you're on top of deadlines, right? Normally, when a child walks into a classroom, maybe on the board, there's a corner where the deadlines are there, and they know that when they walk into a class, they look up, they can easily, process that 2 assignments are due that week. This now students have to be proactive and they have to go into the email, and so just recognizing that there's a gap that exists, and it's our job as parents to recognize what those gaps are and to support our children as they do so. As we support, they're going to fall time and time and time again, but we need to be patient with them, and we need to be somewhat patient with everyone involved, the teachers, the schools, as they try to, improve their service delivery. We are also supposed to keep them accountable, but, just let's understand that we're all in this together.
I love everything you packed into that, and I like what you said about we have to change our expectations. And I found the other day my son, he expressed frustration because I'm getting so many emails from Google Classroom. I can't even keep up, and like you said, if you go to a physical class, you're reminded daily, okay, drop your homework, sign your book, drop it
There's
here.
a bin, there's a bin where they just drop it in. They don't have to think
Yeah.
about it.
Now it's
Yeah.
online and they're getting emails and they're getting alerts, and it's a lot. Because even as a parent, as an adult, I know how sometimes I run away from my email because they're just too many emails.
Yeah.
So for a child, you're learning and you're then being flagged that you didn't do homework. And when you ask them, and that's why what you said is so important about changing our expectations, rather than screaming at the child and say, how come I got an email saying you didn't finish your homework? You want to ask, oh, I got this email. Was there a reason you missed this? And you'll be amazed that the reason they didn't do it is because in our case, for example, one of the examples was that he didn't get the email that came saying a new homework had been assigned on the Google Classroom. So imagine a parent who's not aware that things are different. Shouting
or doesn't even have the time.
Doesn't have the time. So two options: you don't have the time, or when you find out, you go attacking versus saying, "Oh, what happened here?" So in doing that, I'm a bit more technically savvy, I guess, but I helped him figure out how to create a folder for everything that was coming from Google Classroom. So it goes into a folder. So now he can check that folder and highlight and pick up what he needs to pick up. But like you said,
I love that.
We need to give ourselves the room to learn and explore together. That helped him. And now we don't have any challenges anymore because he's not missing that notification saying homework has just been put on Google Classroom. So
yes. And another thing that sort of brought to mind, make sure that I'm keeping to time, is that, there are traditional ways of doing things that we've done that still work, like just having a planner, taking notes, right? Even if a teacher is, and that is a skill set too, and I know that I feel like my children don't always know how to take notes. So being able to sort of just learn how to annotate and to take notes as they're reading or as they're listening to what the teacher is, saying, so I know sometimes they have slides that they use, and I personally like having printed slides that you can then write, sort of write on. So, I know that in the past, what I've done with students is if I give them the PowerPoint ahead of time, I may give them like one guiding question that they're using throughout, because definitely you'll get different responses from each child. So even if it's like, okay, we're focusing on summarizing today. So as you read through or as you listen to the lecture, what are some highlights of how you would summarize the purpose of the lesson today. So one slide, they could probably circle a word that stands out, So just having those tools, having tools are so important. Like you said, you were able to help your child to create folders, right? That's a wonderful tool. And I actually might take that away from you, so just things that we traditionally do, having a planner that math is this time, English is this time, break is this time, and having expectations as to what should happen during that time. Because I've also had to, I've had to remind my children that when you have a break, that doesn't mean you go around and you start, snacking and doing other things. You're still in school. So you still need to do academic work during that time. And what does that look like? So I say that they have to have a book beside them, as they're navigating their online learning. So when there's a break, you take your book and you read at least 10 pages during that time. Have water so when you're thirsty. And then I also like having physical breaks. I won't even lie, I personally had to hire someone as a facilitator for them. So I just got like a graduate, and I was like, this is what I want you to do to support my child during online learning. You're not a lesson teacher, but you are an assistant. So you're helping them to keep tabs as to what's going on with their online learning. But obviously not everyone can afford to do that, right? So you just have to do what is right for your family and your dynamic. I know I also discussed with you earlier about waking up earlier and having, about an hour or two with them before school starts. Because if there are certain things that I know I want to do with them, and I want to focus with them with their learning, there's certain things I just can't outsource, especially because I'm a teacher. So there's certain things, my expectations are way above, so, using that time and rearranging, the entire household. So they have to be in bed by a certain time. I can manage to be up earlier because I'm up at that time anyway.
Waking up earlier,
but just changing, our norm. And if our whole household has to reflect that, then so be it.
Right. I love what you said, because the truth is we have to all be flexible, and
yes,
being a parent includes teachable moments which you don't always plan for. And this whole pandemic, this lockdown has been a real example of teachable moments live, showing
has been
how you respond to uncertainties in a healthy way. Okay, because I'm conscious of time, if you have questions.
I know, I actually prepared a PowerPoint, but I got so enthralled in our conversation that I didn't even.
Oh, okay.
But that's fine. But yeah, I think I want us to have time for the questions that people may have.
Do you want to share your PowerPoint now, and then?
Okay, I can quickly run through.
Okay.
I can quickly run through. Okay, I think I need to have the ability to do that.
You have, I believe you're a panelist, so you should have access.
I should? Okay, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, really? Let me quickly.
I mean, we don't have to though. That's fine.
Quickly go, and so where is that? Where do I do that? Okay, share screen. All panelists. All right. Go ahead. You can do it now.
Yay. Okay. Yay. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So OEQA and parents, a powerful partnership. We believe that if we're focusing on quality education for every single child, then we need to have a holistic approach, and family and community engagement is very important in achieving that for quality education of every child. Some of this we've already discussed. COVID-19 has exposed existing education system weaknesses around the world, right? No one has got it together. The US, the UK, those that we look to, even they are trying to figure it out. Okay, and as we've discussed, no one was fully prepared for online learning. Even if you had done it to some extent in the past, it's different now. We learned how important school is, not just for learning, but to provide social and emotional support and to keep mothers in the workforce, right? So this may not be totally relevant to a Nigerian context, but it's interesting that, the data in the US states that 800,000 women in the US left the workforce in August alone. So having to make that decision as a family, if you're a two-parent household, who works and who is going to support these children during this online learning.
Right.
So we may be back in school, but we cannot return to the status quo. Things are different and they will never be the same again. We need to, at this time, there are opportunities. So we need to be able to prepare for emergencies that may occur, not just in the school, but just even in terms of the learning, how it's going to impact learning. You said that the school that your children did, the school that your children go to, they learned from Ebola, and that has just, as a result, continued. So this COVID time expectedly did not destabilize them too much. And we're hoping that all schools are able to get to that level. Okay. How can we improve parent awareness of learning expectations and content? Ensure that quality assurance in education addresses remote and hybrid learning, as well as in-person learning. So we've done that a lot through the registration and the clearance process that we've had schools do with our office. And part of that is having mandatory communication plans. We need to know that you are able to communicate with your parents, your families, your stakeholders in a way that makes sense, and that you can do that frequently when it's needed. So you have to plan. You have to plan for that. It just doesn't happen sporadically. And also for learning, right? We've had a lockdown at some point. Other countries have had second, third waves of COVID, and as a result, a lockdown has followed. So if another wave were to occur, and if we need to be on lockdown, not even just for COVID, in the event of NSARS, it was security, right? So when there is a all around lockdown, learning has to be planned. If that situation requires it, strengthening child support and protection inside and outside school. Children are exposed to more now, not just online, but even children that were at risk before, maybe having parents that have to work and they have to be home alone, or they have to fend for themselves or bring additional income into the home. These children are now exposed to different things that they might not have been before when the school was a safe haven for them. So, and we need to double down on supporting literacy reading levels of our students. So to this end, we've talked about launching Lagos Learns Together. So finally, it's happening, but this is part of Lagos Learns Together. So Lagos Learns Together is basically a three-pronged approach to having learning resources for students. Parents, teachers, and school owners are major stakeholders. And we're realizing that we have to have we have to take into account different levels of access. And we've basically started with the levels of access for our students, right? So there's a web portal of open resources for students, parents, teachers. We're distributing learning content and learning packs, so physical learning packs to our most vulnerable populations. This content will also be available online and through our Telegram classes. Courses for school leaders, teachers, and parents, similar to what we're doing today, having them recorded and put on the website so subsequently a parent can go in and learn about how to support my child during online learning, how to, engage in discipline during this time, anything that parents would need that would be formal or non-formal. Literacy assessments and interventions specifically for primary school students, and transparent school evaluations. So this is a bit of a screenshot of part of the website, right? So we have a screenshot of whatever resource we have, and then there is a very brief summary of what that website is and what it entails. We made sure that they've been curated and they're free or free for the time of COVID. Okay. And then expert interviews and advice depending on what the topic is. This is an example of a learning pack for JSS 1 to 3. So we have 4 different learning packs that will be available. The soft copy will be available online. And also, so on the website, through the Telegram classes and as physical packs. And we have it for primary 1 to 3, primary 4 to 6, JS 1 to 3, and SS 1 to 3. And we intend on having those out on a monthly basis. So different topics, courses for parents, teachers, and school leaders. There's a few examples: helping your child to learn to read, supporting reading comprehension, studying skills, innovation, having difficult conversations. This I won't really go through this, but this is just to give you an idea of the type of literacy assessment and intervention that we're planning to do. And we're going to start off with collecting baseline information of public school students and private school students, and really being able to, get a sampling of data to figure out where our students are and what they need to do to improve. And we're started with primary 3 students. We will create more motivation around our Read Aloud Lagos program. So having, mandatory, well, not mandatory, but having, goals of maybe 25 books or 5 books that students need to read, reading aloud stories on the Read Aloud Lagos website. We have a lot of stories there, including astronauts that are reading from space. So just get that back on the forefront, online and in schools. And then this is what I'm very, very excited about, is the grading process that we plan to have within our office. It's a 2-year plan to get started. We'll start next year. So we are planning to not just go to schools as we have been to inspect them, but also giving some sort of grading, right? So having grades based on infrastructure, based on teacher quality, based on readiness for child protection, all these things based on teacher effectiveness, so that parents have some baseline information about how their schools are doing. And this will be for public and private schools. So that's it. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Oh, that was perfect, quick, and straight to the point. Now there's a question that came that I think fits quite nicely into what you just shared, your last slide. And the question was, is there any plan to rank schools in Lagos? It feels like popularity, high school fees, and location is what school owners use to determine if their school is great. Parents have nothing standardized to go by.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, so that's what we're hoping the grading will do, right? The grading should address that. So for instance, if you have a school that's down the street and that is 10 naira, and the school is graded AB, and we've maybe it's a B overall, but then you're able to see the indicators as to why they're a B, maybe on a scale of 1 to 4. Their teachers are top quality, based on student surveys. The children feel welcome in that school environment, and they would recommend that school to other children. The parents are happy. Everything is not just about academics. We will also look at academics, because that has a lot to do with the effectiveness of the school, and the effectiveness of the teachers at the end of the day. What their results have been in YF, or external exams they've taken, or universities that the students end up graduating and going to. But yes, at the beginning, it will be basic things. So basic things like infrastructural data on learning assessment and those things. But as we move on, those are the things that from the beginning, I said I'd like to start with the end in mind. That's where we're going. I want to be able to compare a school that's down the street that costs X amount to a school across the state. And if I'm deciding to go to school across the state, I'm willingly making that, I'm making an informed decision to do so.
Gotcha.
Great question.
Yeah, that's really important, because that's a question we get a lot, is how do you determine if a school is good? Is it the fees? Is it convenient? What should you be looking at? And I think there's no one final answer, because everything is different for you. But I honestly don't personally believe a child should be spending 3 hours one way to get to school. There's just I mean, why?
It's challenging. It's challenging. But at least even if you're doing that, you're doing that equipped with all this information, right? if you choose to do that as a parent, then your end justifies the means, right? You're making an informed decision. You know that it's going to be worth it at the end of the day. And if they're not serving your needs, then you have information to go elsewhere. And, you know, there is choice when it comes to, especially, you know, to private schools.
Mhm. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned something that I didn't know was something that was being offered. Their Telegram classes. So how do
Yes,
parents get access
it's
to that?
part of, so it's part of the Lagos Learns Together that I've been talking to you about
Okay.
launching. So when we launch, that will be available on our website. The information about that will be available on the website.
I think that's
So
really
we're really excited, yeah, to finally launch. So, I mean, the Telegram classes, they'll be very low hanging to begin with, right? It's recognizing that a lot of people are not even able to go to physical school for whatever reason, and may not have access as a result of that, maybe to like a learning management system. So even if it's for a few hours a day, where they're able to turn in work and get feedback on their work, because, you know, oftentimes, you know, it's one thing for a child to do work, but getting feedback is crucial to making sure that the learning stays with them. You know, so being able to get feedback on your work, being able to have curated lessons that are based on maybe voice notes, videos, you know, and then of course the learning packs itself. So at the very least, you know, that resource will be available on that Telegram, which is just the learning pack that you can just download, because the physical learning pack will be made available to those that are most vulnerable. So those that don't have TV, those that don't have radio, and where the physical pack will probably be the only source of learning for them. You know, so we're in the process of getting that done now.
That's good. And I think I like the fact that we're being modular and accepting what pertains as they will for us here locally. Not everybody can go online. Not everyone can have access to a computer or Zoom. So it's
Yeah,
great to make sure that we're reaching out to those who maybe it's WhatsApp they're using or Telegram.
exactly.
And at least we can use technology to our advantage to make sure that learning is being disseminated to as many children as possible. Okay,
Right.
I have one other question that we had that came in, and the question here is around school resumption. Are all schools fully resumed now, or how exactly is
Yes.
that playing?
All schools are able to open, right? So, as we found now during COVID, from some schools, they've made the decision that they want to open and just online, and that's fine, right? That is fine. That works for your school, and that's fine. Some schools have said, you know what, we can do it hybrid. You're in school 2 days, and then the remaining you're at home. And some schools are fully in. Now, with whatever your school decides, they still must adhere to COVID-19 set protocols. They still need to maintain social distancing. They still need to make sure that, you know, children are washing their hands frequently. They need to have those systems in place, and they still need to be wearing their face masks. So at the very, very least, that's what needs to be done. Our office has required that all schools in the state register as a first point towards reopening, so that they register with us. And then there's a course that all teachers and school-based staff are supposed to take. And right now we have roughly 30,000 teachers that have taken that course. And then they're supposed to show evidence. The school owner then shows evidence of a few of their teachers taking that as they submit the plans towards clearance. And those plans are centered on communications, like I talked about earlier, learning plans, so hybrid, remote, in school, how's it going to work? Assessment is part of that as well. How are you getting baseline information about where your children are so you can address those gaps? Operational plans. How is the school being run? How are kids being dropped off? How are they coming in? What stickers are on the ground? How many, you know, floor plans where you've measured out your rooms and you can figure out how many children can fit in that room. Or if you're doing outdoors, right, and you're able to maintain you know, the social distancing parameters, that's fine as well. Whatever works, it's not going to be the same, but you need to show us that you've planned toward that, you know, for clearance. And then the last is health, safety, and sanitation. How frequently your bathrooms being cleaned, how frequently, what type of plans do you have in place for sanitizers being refilled, or soap, water. Not everyone has running water, so they need to refill buckets with water. And then also having a clear idea about your COVID-19 isolation centers, knowing the full processes and protocols for if there's COVID in your school, what's to be done, what the expectations are supposed to be. So this is what we've set up for schools. And right now we have about, I want to say about 15,000 schools that are registered, both public and private, that are registered with us toward that. And we have quite a number of schools that have submitted their plans toward reopening. So right now we're in the process of evaluating those plans and then planning to give schools clearance. Now, clearance is not mandatory for reopening, right? Federal government has told you what to do, their guidelines, read, schools, read, do what you're supposed to do. But this is just an extra layer of support that we're offering our schools at no cost to anyone.
Okay, fantastic. That's great to know. We have one more question and then we'll start to wrap up. This question came in from someone who wants to know, what are your thoughts on developmental levies, aka levy to pin you down in our school, irrespective of the quality of our service? Did you get the question?
Well, I think so, with development levies,
Yeah,
right? And I know those fees have been existent before COVID, right?
Okay, I think we have a little break in transmission. Just waiting for Abiola to connect back. If you have any further questions, you can drop it in the Q&A. We've also checked the YouTube channel as well. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, you're back.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, our Niger factor. So
yeah. That's
I was dependent on the Wi-Fi. Okay. So with the development levies, those levies have been on ground before. Oh my God.
What's that? I think she's probably just reconnecting back. So let's just give a few minutes for that to come back on. Just wait for Abiola to come back. For everyone who's on, thank you. Like, she's just answering the question around developmental levies. So just going to wait for her to come back and then we will wrap up. So we've been covering quite a few things today, and this is just in a series of engaging all the stakeholders around our children's education, specifically with the DG on quality assurance when it comes to education being provided for our children. And the conversation today is really about what we can be doing to support our children's education. And we're taking questions, and it's open-ended, so you can ask any questions that you have. We're waiting for her to come back on so we can wrap up today's town hall, virtual town hall. If you have any comments, chats, you can drop it in the chat room to let us know what you think about this. Is it something you'd like to be part of in the future? Is there any suggestions you have as well about, having this kind of conversations on a more regular basis? I would love to see your comments in the chat room. You can send it to me directly or to everyone. So let's just see if she's going to be able to come back on. Now, this is some of the reality, right? When we're talking about online learning, for example, anything can happen with power, and the children are not able to connect back to class. And the reality is we need to have backups, and we need to be flexible as well, because this can happen. This can happen anytime to anybody. All right, I'm getting a few comments saying that, this has been insightful. Yes, indeed, Lagos Learns Together, which is launching, is really, really a great initiative to get our children access to continuous learning wherever they are. So you would want to check that out. If somebody can drop the link to the website for Lagos Learns Together, if it's available, you can drop that in the chat room, that would be great. If not, we'll send it to everybody who registered for this webinar. Okay, well, we might have to wrap up, because I think there's some challenge with getting back. But I want to just summarize some of the things we've spoken about. We've spoken about the fact that, we need to be flexible. Our children are going through a lot of changes right now. Schools cannot go back to the way they were pre-pandemic. Things have changed. We need to be thinking about online learning, remote learning. You should be asking yourself, I like what she said about backward by design. So you want to think about where you want your child to end up 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the line, and then work backwards. Schools have definitely changed forever. We need to realize that expectations should be different now that our children have been at home for a while, or maybe are even still learning from home. Expectations should be different. Homework might be taking longer, for example, because maybe the child takes longer because they're using the computers to do it versus writing. We also need to make sure that we're encouraging them to continue to learn, to continue to read. Literacy is critical. What else did we talk about? We talked about being flexible. Support your child during this period. Children are also being exposed to so much more now, because some parents have to work, and children, for example, have to be at home by themselves. So we have to be looking at protection as well, because children are being exposed to much more than before. And, the DG Abiola did mention Lagos Learns Together, which is launching, which offers a lot of material, learning material, support, access to experts. So it's a holistic platform that helps children and educators and parents to support their children with their learning, but lifelong learning, not just academics. Learning today is so much more than just, the grades you get in school. She also spoke about the learning packs that are physically being delivered to areas that don't have access, for example, to online learning. So it's not only limited to people that can get online or not. They have packs, 4 different packs that are going out across different classes. They're also launching a grading school system, which will start to grade schools and start to give you public insight into the schools based on several parameters. So, infrastructure, teachers, quality, and all of those things. So it would help us to start getting a sense of accreditation of the schools. So we covered a lot of things, actually, and we'll be having this more regularly so that parents know what is going on in terms of quality assurance for education in the state. Now we have the website, and the website is oeqalagos.com. So you can see the picture on the website, on the Zoom here. So that's oeqalagos.com. So you can get more information there about the Office of Education Quality Assurance. And the Lagos Learns Together website is being updated at the moment. So once it is launched and it is good to go, we will make sure we get that information to everybody. Okay, we're getting a message from the speaker saying that this has been very good. Thank you, Mercy, for sharing that this is commendable and that you hope we can make this system work. Indeed, this is the plan, to continue to have this dialogue so that we can all benefit and we can all grow and learn from each other. So thank you for being part of this. We will keep you up to date on next sessions. So feel free to invite anyone that you believe will get value from attending such conversations in the future. If you have specific areas you would like us to cover, also let us know so that we can plan for that in the future. This video, yes, will be made available to everybody, so you will be able to get access to replay, and we'll also share it on our LagosMums YouTube channel, as well as the OEQA channel on YouTube. So thank you everybody for participating. And we'll be ending this town hall session now. Thank you for, thank you. You're welcome, Remy. Thank you. Thank you for participating. All right, everyone. Bye now.